Hi, everyone. The talk is actually general level. I'm not going to go into details, but it's very related to what David was talking about, so it was perfect that he goes before. So today I'm talking about a fellowship that we did, a collaborative security review that we did on two Circum code bases over a period of 2 weeks. The first one is the rate limiting nullifier, and the second one is Spartan ECDSA. They are both relatively small code bases. The RLN is a ZK library for controlling, for spam prevention in permissionless environments. So you can have users limited to a certain number of limits, and if they exceed that, basically their secret gets revealed, and anyone can permissionally slash them. The Spartan ECDSA is an optimization implementation of ECDSA, highly optimized compared to previous implementations. So we looked into these two over a period of 5 weeks, and this talk is basically just to give you an idea of our experience as people who are new to ZK generally. So the participant in this collaboration, collaborative security review or fellowship, as we call them at Y Academy, there was 2 of us at Y Academy team, 14 fellows, and 8 mentors that help us throughout. And as you can see here, most of the fellows, almost all of them, basically are intermediate or below, so everybody was basically new to ZK generally. But they are otherwise, excellent developers or researchers. So we just put all of these people together, and we just wanted to see what happens. We had experience before running fellowships like this on smart contract side, but in ZK, this was our first attempt. So despite the fact that it was our first time and we are all new to it, and some of the code bases were reviewed before us as well, we still managed to find a few issues. The one critical issue here is actually related to what David was talking about making an assumption on the client side. So if the input is not hashed, you could forge proofs, basically, if the input is 0, basically. I should say, from the point of view of the code-based developer, this is not actually a bug, because they say, no, we expect the client side or the administrator of this P2P network to actually check that there is a hash. We're not going to hash it in circuit, because that adds a lot of constraint. So this is actually one of the unique, as David said, one of the unique attack vectors that is unique to ZK, this assumption on input to the circuit. We also had one issue related to unused public input as well. And the recommendation was to add that dummy constraint, basically. So now I want to talk about the experience. How did we think about delving into this? As you know, ZK there is a learning curve. It's quite the hump to get over, especially if you are looking to become an auditor, because as an auditor, you can't really afford to abstract away stuff. If you are a developer and the abstractions are clean, you can just take it and use it. You can afford to put things on the side. But for auditing, you really need to understand a lot of stuff. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the intimidating moon math that is involved. So we thought really, really hard over a period of months of how do we onboard someone who is otherwise very excellent developer or researcher or auditor into ZK. Now, there is a lot of material out there, amazing ZK material. And they usually start with this prover verifier model. So they explain to you the two, and then they take it from there, and suddenly you find yourself very quickly buried into details. So we thought about what can we do to complement the material out there, but also have sort of a plan, Instead of understanding every corner of Istanbul, what we try to do is to actually find a way to create a map or create a way for you to know where you are in the city and how to find your way back into home, basically. So our approach is, what is the minimal viable theory to get to the code? What do we have to do to get to the code, basically? And the strategy that we came up with is 2 phases. Like we had a top-down exposition of the reduction phase. So zero knowledge in general can be thought of as these 2 major phases. You have the reduction phase, and they have the argument phase. The meeting point between these two phases is the system of polynomials. So in the reduction, you start from something, some front end, CIRCOM, Rust, something like Rust or another DSL, and you're basically doing a bunch of compilation until you get to R1CS, until you get to the polynomials. And then from there on, you get the argument phase, and that's where a lot of the difficult stuff happens as well in the ZK Snark machinery. So, but just by simply breaking these two, emphasizing the decoupling of these two, you can basically know your place in the forest, the ZK forest at all time. Now, the reduction phase is mostly complexity theory of computer science, and our goal was we do not want to make assumption on the auditors. And the reason for this is from past experience, some of the best auditors in our smart contract side, they did not even come from a STEM background. Some of them were lawyers or finance people. So we wanted to be inclusive of such people, but also like make sure we don't lose them, because we need everyone, every talent we can get in the ZK space. So the reduction phase is mostly a crash course in complexity theory. And then the argument phase, that's where you can afford to actually break things down into smaller chunks that you can attack piece by piece. So you don't have to know some check in order to understand, some other checking mechanism, for example. You can afford to leave some check until future time. Unlike the reduction phase, where you really have to, get this holistic view of what this reduction means, what the theoretical limitation is, etc. So this one is top-down, the other one is bottom-up. And one way to think of the complexity side is the epistemological context of ZK snarks. So the prover-verifier model is really nothing but a computational model. You may be familiar with the Turing machine or something like that. The prover-verifier model is simply a Turing machine, but with two processes, and we want one process to do as little work as possible. So it's a computational model where you decompose into two sub-processes that communicate in a certain way, but you really want one of them to do as little work as possible to make the whole thing worth it. While the other side, you have, it's like a toolkit. It's like a closet that you open and you mix and match between different protocols to allow you to do this argument, satisfying completeness and soundness and all of that. The input here, computation, and the output is polynomials. That's why I mentioned earlier that the meeting point between these two universes is the system of polynomials. Okay, so we ran into some unique challenges. For example, tooling is very still nascent. You don't get a lot of help there. So some of the fellows that participated in the program, they ended up doing their own tooling, and we did share that publicly. There is a new type of attack vector. This is related to what David was talking about assumption, for example, on the input. They must be hashed, and this has to be checked somewhere. And if you choose not to hash in circuit to save, you really need to put these big warnings to developers. By the way, people can pass in 0 and they will get a valid proof. Another challenge is that, if you are remember, I'm talking here from the point of view of someone trying to get into this stuff. The proof systems are evolving like really, really rapidly over the past 3 years. There has been a Cambrian explosion. It has been amazing to see, really. But this is a question that you really need to ask yourself, and someone was actually just asking me this just before the talk. So you need to think about your investment thesis. Where should you allocate your time and skills, basically? Which proof system is likely to be there, or in one variant or another? Some of the lessons that we learned is that whatever time you think you need for something, multiply that by 2 to 3 times. So we reserved 5 weeks, but we actually needed at least 2 to 3 months, basically. Another lesson we learned is also this: know your place in the forest at all times. So I talked about the reduction phase and the argument phase. So Whenever you see yourself buried in details and you're being challenged and you're a bit lost, at least know where you are. I am dealing with a protocol that allows me for such and such, and this is my place in the universe. And this protocol can be swapped for something else, etc. So try to know where you are, basically. Another lesson is, this stuff is challenging. There is a lot of amazing people out there willing to help. But the advice is do as much work on your own before asking. This is not only because to be respectful of a mentor's time, but it also will make you catch whatever feedback they get much faster if you really bang your head against it significantly. So this is the fellowships that we did over 5 weeks. It's all public, it's all published. You can go over the sessions, discussions, the puzzles, and the review reports, basically. And we are actually now working on the next collaborative program, similar fellowship, based on the lessons that we learned, the lessons that I talked about here. It's happening soon, TM, probably, next month we'll announce our Q1, basically. And it's going to be mostly in Halo 2 and on Rust. This only worked really because of these amazing people, all of them, the Y Academy team, the fellows, the mentors. Everyone kind of came together, and it was a really magical experience. Some of the fellows, they ended up being extremely exceptional. They found their home in the ZK space, and I'm glad to know that they are going to continue in it. But special thanks also to the mentors, especially Rasul and Daniel. They are the code-based authors. Without their input, this would not have worked. So yeah, thank you. This is, as I said, it's high level, but it's a little bit related to what David was talking about. So yeah, thank you for your time.